Hi, this is Margaret Byrd and welcome to Color Quest. So much of what we do here on this channel is look at the way in which we can find natural color predominantly from plants. Sometimes we've had earth mixed in with pigments, but today I'd like to look at truly one of the most long-standing dyes in the natural dyers world that creates all kinds of colors in the red, purple, orange spectrum, and that is cochineal. This is a scale insect that lives on the nopales cactus, and the carminic acid in its little tiny body is one of the most vibrant reds out there. So today I'd like to start looking at cochineal over the next few weeks and see the various colors that this remarkable insect will bring to our dye studios, and continue looking at different ways in which we can bring about the rainbow in our dye studios. So let's go look at those bugs. So my story with cochineal begins about 3 years ago when I was fortunate enough to work on a cochineal farm in Oaxaca, Mexico. This farm actually raised and harvested cochineal, and I spent several weeks learning how to bring about different shades of color from this dye source. Subsequent to that, I also was lucky enough to work with cochineal when I was working with a dye master in Peru. They also have the nopales cactus in that region and have been utilizing it in their red, purple, and orange spectrum as well. Now, something to know about cochineal is that its long history over the centuries is not a nice history. And if you're going to use cochineal, I strongly recommend that you go back and read about cochineal historically, how it was used to conquer and dominate lands and people, all in the name of bringing red to the wealthy and aristocratic communities. At one point, cochineal was even bought and sold and considered more valuable than precious metals like gold and silver. So take a moment of silence when you work with cochineal to recognize those that worked hard and died to bring about this incredible color for most of the world. There is another scale insect that you may have heard of that brings about red colors, and that is lac. That is something that is harvested in other parts of the world, and both of these insects are used in the natural dyers world for the vibrancy of its dye. I have not worked with lac, and I hope to do so at some point in the future. But today, we get to welcome cochineal. Now, in today's current landscape, the island region of the Canaries off the coast of Africa are producing the majority of the world's resource of cochineal. And one of those farms reached out to me to ask if I would like to try their cochineal. I accepted their kind offer and have been holding on to this small package of cochineal for quite some time. I was hoping to have a moment to share it with you, but we have so many other things that we look at. It's taken me more than a year to get it into the video roster. But perfect timing considering that we've been looking at the rainbow over the last few months now, particularly in overdyeing, and different ways in which to welcome the various colors of Roy G. Biv. Today, we're going to look at just one of those colors because cochineal is, guess what? pH sensitive, which means that you can shift its color. We are going to start off by looking at red. And red is not what you will get if you put your cochineal into a dye pot right out of the gate. The color that comes from it tends to be a more pinkish hue. But with the help of some of our kitchen modifiers, we can welcome red. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. Now, since we're going to be using cochineal over the next few weeks, I'm actually going to make just one pot today that I'm going to use over the next few videos. So to that end, I'm going to be weighing the dry weight of the fiber that we're going to be using in the next few videos. That means I will be making enough of this dye in order to break it up into smaller quantities and each week shift it using a different modifier. Cochineal is very strong. You can use anywhere from 3 to 10% of the weight of fiber. 3 is going to bring about lighter colors, and I'm going to go straight to 10%, which will give you the deepest, darkest colors. Let's weigh our fiber and see if we have enough of this sample cochineal from the Canaries in order to make one pot of dye for the next month. So first we want to weigh the dry fiber so that we can figure out how much cochineal we're going to need. So we're at 22 grams of all the fiber I'm going to be dyeing over the next few weeks. So as we've done over the past few months, I'm going to be looking at wool in a yarn format, silk in a ribbon form, as well as cotton. And I've cut these down into smaller sizes so that we can make swatches across the next month and compare it with what we've been looking at over the past few months. We are going to truly have an incredible rainbow at the end of all of this. I just love experimenting. So weighing all of that fiber together, we came up at approximately 22 grams of fiber. So at 10%, I'm going to need approximately 2.2 or 2 grams of cochineal. And guess what? That's exactly what I have. Perfect. So in a previous video here, I worked with cochineal. I did not crush the insects, but when I worked in both Oaxaca and in Peru, we always ground the cochineal up. So that's what we're gonna do first today. Get out a mortar and pestle if you have one, and let's start grinding this insect, and wait till you see the vibrancy just from grinding it. It's pretty remarkable. Hey, you know, something I wanted to tell you is that there is a very specific odor associated with cochineal. And when I ground this up, I had flashbacks of my time both in Oaxaca and in Chinchero in Peru. It is a very specific scent, a very earthy scent. And when you have that kind of connection, it really makes it special to work with something like this again. And yes, we need to prepare our fibers properly. That means we need to wash it. I do a simple wash on the stovetop with a little bit of gentle dish detergent, just a 30-minute low heat. We'll clean it up. If you want to do a deeper scour, there are many other ways to go about that, using things like washing soda or soda ash. There's even some commercial grade scouring products. I don't use it. One by the name of Synthropol is one that's quite common. If you have fiber that has quite a bit of residual sizing or other protective coatings on it, or is dirty, you may want to do a deeper scour. I have not been doing that over the past few months, and in general I don't tend to do that, but it is always an option if you feel that your fiber needs a deeper cleaning. Second step is always going to be a mordant. Yes, we like to mordant with cochineal. You are going to notice that with protein fibers, cochineal really loves it, as with most other dye sources. It's a little tougher with the cellulose fibers of cotton, so we want to make sure to mordant those in order to get the best binding results. The wool and silk, I will soak in a pot of alum or aluminum potassium sulfate. I'm going to be using exhaust baths that I've already made prior, usually coming in at about 10% weight of fiber. I'm not going to worry too terribly much about it. Cochineal is pretty strong, especially with those protein fibers. And for the cotton, I have pre-treated it with a mordant of aluminum acetate. So I will get the wool and silk done now after it's cleaned, so it'll be a nice fresh mordant. And while that's happening, I'm also going to be soaking my cotton fiber, because you know we always want to be working with wet fibers. It just works better. So make that a practice of giving yourself a little bit of time prior to doing anything with your fibers to be soaking them in some water, so that you can remove the oxygen and have them best receive whatever process you're taking them through, whether it be a mordant process or the dye itself. So let's be efficient. While we are getting the fiber prepped, let's go ahead and start making our cochineal bath. I'm going to be working with cochineal in an extraction process. And what that means is that we are going to be doing multiple short and very hot extractions in a reduced volume of water in order to welcome as much of that color as we can get. Cochineal is powerful. So using it just once, you're always going to have a little bit more color power available. I'm going to do this 3 times today. It may be that I could do it a 4th and a 5th time, but I will combine all of these extractions together, knowing that each time the color is going to get a little bit lighter. By doing this, I hope to extract as much as I can out of these cochineal insects, and it's possible that I will save the powder as well, because I could still utilize it in an exhaust situation, sprinkle it on to an echo print. It will still give me some color, guaranteed. This is such a strong dye source. Just in the short time I've been working with it here in the studio today, I have left red fingerprints across the kitchen. Trust me, this is powerful stuff. Now we have ground this to a fine powder. I could simply put it into the dye pot. When I worked with this in both Mexico and Peru, we simply put the ground cochineal into the dye pot and cooked the heck out of it. We never strained it out, so you are welcome to do that. However, today, in an effort to separate that powder from the dye itself, I'm going to place it into a nut milk bag and then use it almost like a tea steeping scenario. If you have cheesecloth or muslin, you can do that. Or as I've said, you can just put it right in the dye pot. You don't have to strain it out. I'm just going to do that today to show you. So let's get started with that. The first one's going to be really strong, and then we're slowly going to see that color get lighter and lighter. And then I'm going to combine them all together, and that will be our master dye pot that we're going to be utilizing over the next few weeks. right, we have this beautiful pot filled with that incredible, vibrant color. It sits in a sort of pinkish realm, but now it's time for us to take that color and play around with the pH. Today, we're going to be modifying it to go to the red spectrum, and we're going to be using a very common household product, and that is cream of tartar. Cream of tartar lives on the acidic side of the pH spectrum, and by utilizing a very small percentage, about 5% of the weight of fiber, or in this instance, we're going to be using a half a teaspoon, we're going to add that to the dye pot. But I'm going to be separating the dye from the larger master pot in order to keep the original color and play with it in the next few videos. We will pull a few cups of this dye bath into its own pot, add a half a teaspoon of cream of tartar, and you're going to see it shift immediately to a very vibrant red. Once we do that, we will add our fiber that's been washed and pre-treated with a mordant right into that bath. Let it heat on the stove. We're gonna work at a higher temperature today. It can actually even go to a boil. I certainly did that with the Dye Master Maria in Peru. We had that cochineal boiling wildly, and we will let it sit on the stove top for about an hour. I'm then gonna let it rest like I always do in the dye pot until it cools. That's gonna give it several hours sitting in that very strong red dye. So let's get to that process and see what colors emerge on the other side. How about those differences? Wow, cellulose fiber of cotton. You're not really taking too much of that cochineal, are you? I was actually surprised at how light that turned out. There is a two-step mordant process that I have talked about here on Color Quest, where you first soak your cotton or cellulose fiber in a tannin bath, like a gallo tannin, and then you follow it with an alum bath. Since my cotton was pre-treated with aluminum acetate, I thought we probably had enough mordant power. That is one of the finest ways to do it. However, if you can do a tannin and then an alum soak on a piece of cellulose fiber like cotton, you might get a deeper bond and a deeper color. All right, there you have it. Look at those protein fibers of the wool. Wow, that is a gorgeous red. Oh my gosh. And the silk as well. So beautiful, beautiful color. The cotton, really light. It has a very pretty pink color, but it did not take up the red, as you can see, like the protein fibers. I don't think it ever is as strong. So really cochineal and protein, yay, look at that. Look at that red. We have these beautiful colors on the red spectrum, thanks to cochineal. So once again, protein fibers for the win on this one. I'm telling you, if you are just getting started working with natural dyes, start working first with protein fibers like silk and wool. You will not be disappointed. Natural color loves them, and today was no exception. However, if you pre-treat your cellulose fibers and your other fibers properly with a really strong mordant process, whatever that may be, you are sure to get deeper, darker colors regardless. Plus, mordants, they create that bond. They are truly the secret to all successful dye sessions. Now, next week on Color Quest, I would like to see how cochineal can bring about orange in the dye pot. And guess what? It can. So next week, let's use a different modifier, play around with that pH of this incredible insect, and see if we can't welcome a new shade of orange. I hope you're having an incredible May and starting to get out and about into your garden space if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, and testing out some cool new stuff in your dye studio. Have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you next Friday here on Color Quest. An extraction process across multiple short sorry about that.